Welcome to Make It Make Sense, the podcast where healthcare meets hustle.
That's right. I'm Spring Lane, a nurse practitioner and owner of Exceptional Wellness. I'm your go-to for keeping it real in the trenches of healthcare.
And I'm Kim Lynch, CEO of Metis Health Technologies, and your guide to navigating the big picture of health policy, business strategy, and making it all work for you.
Together, we're longtime operators, business partners, and friends who've seen pretty much all of it. From Capitol Hill to the clinic, we know healthcare can feel like a hot mess.
But it doesn't have to. Each week, we're breaking down the chaos of healthcare now and sharing how you can not just survive, but thrive.
We're making bold moves, new business models, and tips to reclaim your time, money, and sanity.
So whether you're running a clinic, building a business, or just trying to make it all make sense,
check us out at beesandunicorns.com, where you can find the episode transcript, and don't forget to hit subscribe.
Let's dive in and make it make sense. This podcast is all about sharing ideas and opinions for building better healthcare. It's not advice. For your healthcare, business, or any other important decisions, consult a qualified expert. And just so we're clear, views expressed are personal and not official positions of any organization.
I know today we have a big topic and I want to get into it. Talking about the financial system of healthcare. And I know this is like going to be
Yeah.
one of many, but I really agree with you that we just want to set the stage of like, what does the current state look like financially? And there's so much to it. And just kind of get some foundational things out there so that we can start building on some of these pieces that we see as we are helping connect the dots, as we are helping make sense to what does this future look like, where we truly have way more health and care in our system, as we march towards that. What does that look like?
Alignment. What does that alignment look like? That's exactly it, Spring. And I think, what we're hoping to do with today's conversation, as Spring said, is just set the table and like probably not even all of the table. We're going to set part of the table of this conversation. But I want to underscore something you said about the access points. We really want to be understanding, uncovering, discussing where are the access points to change this system, right? So it's great to understand it. And what are those access points where, me as a patient, you as a clinician, right? Any of us, hey, as a patient in this system, caregiver, clinician, what are our access points for agency to produce a different outcome? Because it's not everywhere. There are plenty of things that you can't change within the healthcare system, and certainly within the financial aspects of the system. But there are things that you can do to again, align more of what you want to see in terms of the outcomes with your time and your resources. So that's where we're kicking off today. Spring, do you have kind of a first thought of where to begin? Because for me, you know that I place everything into context of the quintuple aim. So this is smack dab in the middle right there of population, quality, and resource utilization. There's the money. Right there in the middle, then engagement and equity. So I'm delighted that we are cracking this one open. Where's your entry point for this conversation?
I think that, I think that thinking about the table, right? Let's just pretend that we have set the table with all of us, right? We're all sitting at this table, this like amazing, beautiful dining table. I am picturing this like very dark wood, maybe like, a cherry, oak, and, just this beautiful, very
I love
nice,
this. Okay.
A little bit, formal dining table, and like just about to have like this amazing 4-course meal at least. And so like I just envision this, right? Like just being spoiled, right? Because that's always my hope, is that everyone feels spoiled. And so thinking about that and thinking about, okay, now I'm going to ruin it a little bit, because we're at this table and we're also being served by multiple vendors, right? Like we don't just have the one kitchen that's serving us, right? So we're all here at this table that is for health and care, and it should make us feel spoiled and amazing and exceptional. Alive, worthy, and liberated. Those are always my favorites. And so as we're sitting there, right, these are our different vendors. And I'm going to kind of just put people into buckets, and I'm going to call them out real quick of where they are currently, right? So like in healthcare, right now, the things that are serving us, we have private insurance, which is still the biggest market, 29%. I'll share the sources with our show notes. But about $1.3 trillion in private insurance. The next biggest bucket is Medicare. We've got 21% there, so almost $1 trillion in spend there. Medicaid is next. That's 18%, so 0.8 trillion there. We've got 11% in out of pocket, 0.4 trillion there, and then about 13% in this third party squishy area, so about $500 billion in spend there. So that kind of makes up all the vendors that we are utilizing in this, that are serving us at this table right now. And so kind of thinking about those, and they're very, very broad. There's so many nuances in each one of them, and we for sure won't get into all of them. But what I want us to understand is we truly, back to your point about agency, we truly are sitting at this table, right? And let's just kind of take our conversation that's happening about healthcare in a lot of different buckets. And most of what I've heard my whole life is around this isn't working, right? So it's like sitting at the table being like, this food sucks. I don't like the food. I don't like the food. And we like have this whole room, right, where all these different vendors are, and we're looking usually at one vendor and we're like, your food sucks and I'm mad and I'm just going to keep telling you your food sucks. And I'm not even going to have a conversation with any of these other vendors, even though it's still my choice. I am choosing you as a vendor and I'm going to complain about you. And I'm like, that never is the mentality we would use in the real world, right? Like we would be like, okay, I'm done coming to you because I've told you your food sucks multiple times. And like, maybe I love you so much and I just wanted to give you all the chances in the world, but also I'm tired of eating crap food. So like, I'm going to explore these other options. And so that's kind of like where I want to start the conversation, is just like, okay, we're at the table, we are picking, and so like, maybe let's look at what do each of those vendors bring to the table and how we might envision our relationship with them being a little bit different if we wanted.
I like that. I mean, because you're right that a lot of people assume one pathway when we start talking about healthcare and money, and it is the insurance delivered primarily through an employer or retiree or, maybe safety net program, right? Like Medicare or Medicaid. Those presumed avenues do leave out all of the other ways that we spend money for or against our health in a given month or a given year. And so thinking about the food we buy, right, that's part of that equation. Of course it is, right? It fuels our health foundationally. Whether we buy new running shoes or a membership to a gym or a dance class or anything like that, of course, part of that equation. And so I guess that's I completely agree with you, Spring. I like to start with like, let's step back and really look at the full table. Hey, the metaphor continues. Not just this one part of the table that we spend a lot of time focusing on and arguing about, because I think it becomes very easy to forget that we have agency and the ability to say, what other dollars or resources, my own time and energy, right, can I contribute to the outcome that I want to see happen here. I think starting to just be curious is probably what I would most recommend folks to begin with, because we could make recommendations on on some sources. Spring has some great ones that she's going to share, but I would say start wherever you are comfortable, wherever you are accessing the healthcare system today is a great place to just start getting curious. So for example, I was having a chat with my mother-in-law a couple months ago about some medication that my father-in-law takes for his diabetes, super common, and we were looking at the prices, and she was looking at pharmacy 1, pharmacy 2. It was a 400% price difference. And my mother-in-law is a former banker. And she's looking at me as someone who works in healthcare. She's like, I worked in banking. What is this? And I was like, that is an excellent question, ma'am. That is a very good question. And as we were talking about it, and saying, and we were going into all the intricacies, all the details. And I said, but let's pull back up. What do you think is really going on here? And what we concluded is it's designed to separate you from your good sense of, did I get a fair price? Do I understand how the money moved? That our current system is really designed to separate you from your knowing of how a dollar you pay moves through the system and reaches your intended purchase, whether that's a purchase at bedside or a purchase at your gym. A purchase at your gym is going to be a lot more straightforward than a purchase with a clinician in most cases. And that's really bizarre and separating us from our knowing about, did I receive good care is a crucial part, hopefully, of all of all of those interactions. But also, was I charged a fair amount?
Because I think that curiosity of around fairness really does help us start to explore. So a couple of other numbers that I want to kind of let us in on is one, like I said, insurance billing is our primary way of paying for things in healthcare right now. And it is growing at about a 5%, which is insane to me, but it is also still growing at about a 5% rate annually, right? But other payment models like direct care, so this is where you either pay a cash price or you have a membership model with a primary care provider like Exceptional Wellness. We do memberships. And you have that direct access, like you were explaining. You don't have someone else in between you and your provider shuffling the money, right? You and your provider sit down, you talk about what's your budget look like how do I help you stay well within your budget? And that is growing at about 10 to 15% annually. So this area is
cool.
Where huge growth is happening. It's one of the biggest growth areas, and actually memberships they put in a different bucket, but I would put it in the same bucket, and that is seeing 15 to 20% growth annually. So this area of the market of healthcare, people, especially, since 2020, there's been a lot of shift because a lot of people saw, like, my health matters. I need to be well. Like, I can't afford to just be running on whatever and thinking I'm okay. Like, I need to be
blind
well.
faith.
And so,
Yeah, blind faith on that the system is going to continue to carry me forward into good health. It's not happening. Yeah, people, I
right.
think you're right.
And I love that. And people are investing in that, right? And so watching that grow is amazing. And then, the cash payment side is also growing at a very modest rate, about 5 to 8%. So when we look at where healthcare is going, right, I think a lot of people there are more providers out there providing this type of care. I actually have multiple in our community that have switched over in the last year. One, because as a small business owner or a small practice, it's much easier than trying to play the game insurance wise. And I call it a game because I don't know what else to call it. But it's like every insurance company has this form and it has these certain codes they want on this type of bill and that kind of thing. And it's a lot to try to get all in the right buckets, which I know Medis
I think of
helps
it,
with.
you've heard me say, yes, this is what we do at Medis, but it's like a video game set on hard mode that changes all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that is getting paid in the fee for service system that we built in the last century and are still largely on from the last century. But you're right, the growth is happening in other parts of this metaphorical table. We're really obsessed with the fee for service end of this table. There are other options, and everything at the federal policy level, and I think state as well, is really pushing towards more innovation on the payment side of the house. It is really encouraging and wanting clinicians to experiment with different types of payment, to say, not only is it okay for you to take direct payment, we would like you to experiment with taking direct payment. We are going to seed direct primary care demonstration projects because we want to see it happen, but those are not the only ways. And I think this presumption of this fee for service, through your employer is the only way to get care presumption. When I hear clinician after clinician after clinician saying, I want to practice in my community, I want to practice close to my patients, whatever that population is, and I want to keep, the resources that I generate here in my community. I really like that. Those are the things that I hear. And that last part, I think, is really crucial for clinicians to keep an eye on, because what we see a ton of is that the money is leaving the community. And to some extent, sure, that makes sense, right? You may need that thing that, that's only one person has. But by and large, health is local, food is local, your community is local, I think keeping an eye on, when we put a dollar into the system, does it reach its intended purpose is a crucial question we need to ask more often. And when the money is leaving the community, whether it is by the terms of a particular contract or the presence of a particular, force, organization, what have you, in a market, that's a real problem and something that we at minimum need to get curious about. And I'll pause on this point of and clinicians, no dollar enters this system if not through you. You have actually all of the tools, they're just not in your hands, right? This money enters in and through you. Your clinical autonomy, I think we've done a good job of asserting, but I would say that this financial knowing and accountability is just as crucial, not just for you, it's also for your patients. You can't have, the access you want to have. You can't provide the kind of care you want to have if you have totally unpredictable payment. And this is where just knowing that there are other options, knowing that there's this experimentation that's being encouraged, I think is so important, because we're in this stage of experimentation. There are not, I think, hard and fast answers of how to do this better yet. I think there are some promising signals, and I'm really excited to see a lot more experimentation happening, again, on other parts of this metaphorical table, because we've been so laser-like focused on only one part of it for so long.
Yeah. I know we're getting close to time. I want to do a little kind of just, this isn't way oversimplification, but I'm just putting on my consumer hat right now. Having used a lot of these different types of care, right? A lot of these vendors to our table. I'm just going to kind of summarize what I see as the rules of engagement, right? So you talk about private insurance, like you said, most times that means I have to have a job where they offer private insurance because I can't afford it as an individual on my own. Most times, not always, but that's how I see it as a consumer. So it's okay, I have to have a job, which as an employer, I'm this is what helps me get people in my door who are quality. It's because I have good benefits, right? I have good private insurance is what usually they mean by good benefits. So it's okay, either I have to have that, or then if I don't have a job that affords me private insurance, maybe I have a job where I'm making minimum wage or close to that. And so I might receive Medicaid, right? I might qualify for some government assistance. Definitely have been there. And it's okay, so I basically have to be pretty impoverished and struggling in order to get Medicaid, right? Sometimes I'm still pretty struggling and I can't get Medicaid because all the rules, right? And so that's frustrating. So I might be in a position where I'm I don't have private insurance and I can't have Medicaid,
and
I'm too young to have Medicare,
yep,
right?
Absolutely.
This is where a lot of people are, and that's where you end up with, people who are having to pay cash whenever they have health care, right? And it's really a lot of times hard to find someone who has even an option for you to pay cash.
Which is such a bummer. I just want to interject because I also hear doctors tell me about, I was up in Maine and a doctor told me this story just a couple of weeks ago. A guy gets off a lobster boat. He's got $50 in his pocket or a crate of lobsters. I'd like to see him. You should be able to see that patient. And I think that point of there are so many people who are frustrated by the administrative hoops and all of the different things. You should be frustrated. We are too. And the best news I've heard in a long time is that you are actively being encouraged to innovate with the clinicians in your community. Maybe they're not doing it Spring's exactly right. Trying to find those clinicians is really difficult right now. But I think this is the diversification of revenue streams. I know that's a big chunk of words, but really it's about taking lots of different kinds of business into your clinical practice, or understanding which types of business aligns with how you want to practice in your community with your populations. And I think, Spring, you've got such a great story to tell of how you've gotten exceptional wellness up off the ground in that way, but you're also not done experimenting by any stretch with your community, right, and with the funding mechanisms that really bring that into balance.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely do whole episodes on, from a practice perspective, how, like you said, to diversify your funds and your resources, because I think that definitely deserves multiple episodes. And so it's as a consumer, I'm okay, I don't have private insurance. Maybe I don't qualify for Medicaid. maybe I'm not old enough for Medicare, right? So then I'm in this place of, and this is like I'm going to combine the third party and the out of pocket, because what I see happening, there could be like workers' comp, and sometimes there's like a workplace wellness something, that maybe I have access to some things for free. Or, something in my community, like our community, we do free events every month. There are different things that we do throughout the year. There are lots of different programs that are like, just offered to your community. And so that's really awesome. But like thinking about like each of these and understanding as a consumer, like sometimes you can feel really, really stuck and like with limited options, right? And I just want to say, like I said, this area of memberships, of direct primary care, of direct cash pay, this is growing. And so if you're out there and you're like, I don't like anything they're serving me at this table, I want to say that you might have a neglected vendor. Just like look to the left or
I
right.
have some other options on the table,
It might be out there and
yes.
you just don't know it. Like I live in a small community of about 100,000 people, and we've been here for 2 years. And every day almost, I have someone come in and be like, "You've been here for 2 years? How do we not know you're here?" It happens all the time. I promise you, there are things that you don't know that are in your community. We do consulting for practices, for businesses, for individuals. Like we're happy to help because we want people to get to see this. It is growing, like I just said, 15 to 20% increase annually. That's insane growth, and it is happening. So if you don't know about it, that's okay. But like, let us help you get connected. There are some things that you can do. You can Google direct primary care in my area. I think that's a great first step. And then if you are in a place where you're a consumer and you're like, my workplace only offers XYZ, take that to them. Ask them to start getting creative, because you are the one who is demanding this. You may not see it, but you are the demander. It's your money. It's you coming and showing up for work that gets them buying those benefits, right? So you are very much choosing in an indirect way in a lot of ways, but you could get more direct, like, hey, this is the kind of healthcare I want. This is the kind of outcomes I want. Start like really being demanding. Like, you don't got to be ugly about it.
And it
like,
can start
yeah,
with,
yeah.
it can start with curiosity. I'm curious, how much did we spend last year on healthcare? And, what kind of buckets are we spending that in? I'd love to talk about ways that we might, spend that differently, or, really increase the health of myself and our fellow team members here at whatever company, because healthy employees equal healthy businesses.
Yeah.
We see that again and again and again, and we can correlate it too. So if we need to, do the math, we can do that. But that engagement from your employees is so crucial. And this opportunity to experiment is so clear, but really just at its beginning stages. So as Spring's saying, we are really excited about where the future is going in terms of experimenting with this intersection of, aligning the resources, especially the money, with the outcomes in healthcare. But we are decidedly at the beginning of this transition and have a long, long, long way to go. So any final thoughts, Spring? I mean, maybe even, where I am is, I'm curious what folks want us to delve into next, because as we keep saying, this is a topic we're starting and it's going to go on in perpetuity.
Yes, definitely drop your topics around this. Like, what about the money do you want us to make sense around? I do know that we've talked about, we have some brokers we want to get on here who help make the purchasing happen, both at the individual level and the business level, because
we're super interested in how they align interests, because brokers are in a really cool position to help with this, like, alignment in a very tactical way. Please go on.
Yeah. So, definitely we're looking at, and if you are one and you're like, hey, I got this stuff mapped out, like I am seeing people who are getting way better outcomes. And I love the word outcomes, but also I'm like, what does that mean? Right? Like people who have energy, right? Who show up to work and, or show up to life and have energy, have joy, they aren't constantly thinking about their illnesses, right? That's what we want. We want to be well.
Yeah.
We want to be.
They're not just surviving, they're thriving. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
And so, like, if you're one of those brokers, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. Other folks that I definitely think, would be interesting to have is, people who are doing these like community funded, you know, I love the thought about the creative things that they're doing. I just know there's so many I've talked to who are doing things around like, how do we, like you were talking about with food, like I've got someone in Lafayette they're just opening a community garden, and you know, it's like these kinds of things
amazing.
that,
Yes.
you know, doing different things. I have one who teaches people every year. They do a whole course on like how to basically detoxify your house, because gosh, there's so many toxins. And so it's like all these pieces are important, and I would love to like talk to people who are getting creative and how they use those resources and serve their community. So we'll definitely be thinking about that. But if you think of things, y'all tell us,
Please,
because we're here
yes,
for
get
you
in touch.
and ourselves.
That is
I mean,
it.
I'm selfishly
Yes.
also here for myself to just get it out of me, because, you know, I need everybody to know all these things that are burning in my heart. So.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for this time. And I'm really excited for these next conversations and to hear who hears this and is like, yes, I've got a playbook or I've got ideas. I've just been waiting for someone to ask. So we know you're out there. We can't wait to chat with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
I love you, Kim.
Bye. Love you too.